that'll make the vlog. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the vlog. I'm Dookie Betts, and this is going to be vlog number 16. In this video, we drive up to New Hampshire. We check out Chaser's Poker Room in Salem, New Hampshire. Got quite a bit of comments in the comments section telling me to go play there. I've played there quite a bit in the past, off camera, obviously. We walk in, we ask the floor politely, "Hey man, can we film in here? What's the deal on that?" He pretty much says no immediately, so we get back in our car and we drive elsewhere because we're not going to play off camera. That doesn't make any sense. We take the 30-minute drive to Nashua, New Hampshire, and we go back to Gate City, which is a place we've played in the past on the vlog. We got absolutely wrecked last time. We buy into the 1-2 game for the max, and we pretty quickly move up in stakes when we play at the 1-3 table. This was one of the bigger games that I've played throughout my poker career, and I was definitely a bit nervous at the beginning, but towards the end, I got in some rhythm, got in some flow, and we definitely picked up a few crazy hands, so that was cool. Fun little shot take in this video. We play some very large pots, and it was honestly a fun time. So without further ado, let's hop into the video, and let's turn some sand into gold. I walked in there, I was on the list for 1-2 and 1-3. I got called for 1-2 immediately. I asked the floor guy if I could film in there, and he immediately said no, so I'm not going to play here off camera. I'm going to go somewhere else, find a place to video, find a place to play. It's kind of stupid that they don't let me film in here, to be honest. Like, this is a really good card room, and the action's really good. It's New Hampshire, bro. Like, live free or die. They should let people film poker. It's not that big of a deal. But with that being said, we're either going to go to Gate City, the Brook, or Philatomo, I think it's called, in Manchester. I'm not really sure. I'm going to check the lists on all of those places, and we're gonna make a decision and live with it. So let's fast forward to where we decide to go. All right, fellas. So we ended up in Nashua. We're playing at Gate City today. We're going to go by into the 1-2 game, see how it goes, hopefully film some interesting hands. And yeah, let's go turn some sand into gold. First hand of the day, we sit down at 3:46 p.m. We buy in for $400, which I guess looking back at it now is too much, but nobody said anything, so we went with it, and we get dealt pocket aces for our first hand of the day. I'm not even settled in yet. I haven't really set up my camera, but you know, we're gonna play pocket aces, obviously, so we raise it on up here. 12. And it folds all the way around to the under the gun limper, who puts in the call for $12, and we are going heads up to a flop with the best hand in the game. The flop comes King-9 tray with 2 hearts. We have no heart in our hand, so I think this is kind of a mandatory bet. He checks it on over to us, and we bet pretty large, looking for value against King-X combos and things like that. Unfortunately, he snap folds, and we take down the hand. We show everybody at the table that we were dealt the goods there, and we are sun running so far in the session. Look at that. First hand. Take it. About 45 minutes goes by. We play a few rather insignificant hands, chip down a bit, and in this spot we pick up pocket 10s in the big blind. We see the low jack, the high jack, the cutoff, the button, and the small blind all limp in here for $2. This is very unreasonable in my opinion. We're going to bump it on up to 25. Nice hefty bet here, trying to fold out all the random combinations of cards that people at a 1-2 game can have. So that's exactly what we do. We make it 25 to go, and only the low jack player calls. Everyone else gets out of the way. So instead of playing 5 ways out of position, we're now heads up out of position, which is a much more ideal situation for our specific holding. We get a 9-high 2-tone flop, and similar to the last hand where we had aces, we have no spade in our hand, so we need to be betting this combo more than if we did have a spade to protect from flush draws and things of that nature. So we size up a ton here. We make it $40 to go, and this player pretty quickly jams the rest of his chips in our face, and I throw up on top of the table. The first thing that came to mind here was this just looked like a set that wanted a ton of protection, so hands like 9s or hands like deuces or 6s got there. But then you see the guy in the green freak out when he sees the flop.
Oh. Can't be doing stuff like that, man.
So it's almost like he folded something very good. Obviously, this is terrible etiquette by this guy at the table. You should not be doing this. But because he did do this, we're allowed to now sort of have a blocker effect, if you will. Like, it makes it less likely that our opponent now has, I'm assuming, a set from what it seems like. Also, I think this opponent might have just enough combo draws, straight draws, flush draws, or a little bit of both to make a call here that's profitable, or at least flipping. However, looking back on this hand, I think I'll have better hands to call with, so maybe I should just exploitatively be folding here because people typically don't find enough bluffs at the 1-2 table. I'm going to have a bunch of better overpairs, jacks plus, and then I'm also going to have nines at some frequency, and I might even squeeze pocket sixes like I did here. So I just think I'm going to have way better hands to call with here, so maybe I should be making a very tight fold, but obviously that's not what we do. We put in the money, and he just rolls over pocket jacks. Yep, I got tens. I got jacks. For the good old limp call with jacks, you gotta love to see that. Classic play here, and we lose $212. So as I'm playing this hand, the floor comes over to me, and he goes, "Hey kiddo, I know a place where people don't limp call pocket jacks." And I was super excited. I was like, yeah, dude, like, get me some plane tickets. I'll be there as soon as possible. That was so stupid. And he goes, "Oh no, all you have to do is walk about 10 feet that way and play at the 1-3 game. It's much more reasonable. You just have to buy in for a bit more." So at this point, I'm sold. I'm just tired of these 1-2 games where people are just limping all kinds of hands. You never know where you're at. So I take $400 out of my wallet and add on and go head over to the 1-3 table. We're in for $800 on the day, and we're going to go play some big boy poker in stakes that we haven't really played thus far. So wish us luck. At 5 o'clock at night, we play our first double board bomb pot where everybody puts in $15. We completely whiff on both boards, so end up just check folding here. Not super relevant in terms of the overall hand, but just keep this in mind. We will be playing more of these throughout the night. And they're definitely super interesting. That's one of the main differences between the 1-2 and the 1-3 games here at Gate City. Next hand of the day comes 15 minutes later. We've won a few small pots and chipped up a bit. We pick up 10-7 of spades in the big blind. We see a hijack player limp and the button raises things up to $15. Being in the big blind here, I think we can totally defend this hand. It might be too loose, but I think we're defending all of our suited combos, so this seems completely fine and good. We flick in the $15 and the limper from the hijack comes in as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop with about $45 in the middle. The flop comes 10-9-5 two-tone board, so we flop top pair with no real kicker. Happy to check in flow, and it checks over to the original raiser in the button, who bets $25 for about half pot. I think raising this hand would be a huge overplay, and I think folding would be a huge underplay, so because of that, we're just going to put in the call here, and the hijack player folds, so we're heads up to the turn. Turn comes the ace of spades, which for obvious reasons, really bad card for us. He's going to have a lot of ace-x in his range. We don't have an ace, so pretty much a disaster for us here. We check it on over to him. He bets $60 once again, and I'm going to get sticky here. I think at the 1-3 games, people are finding more bluffs than at the 1-2 games. He might have some sort of flush draw or some sort of straight draw or something like that. So because of this, we flick in the call for the 60. In hindsight, this is definitely too loose. We should for sure be folding our 10-7 here, but we made a mistake in real time, but it is what it is. River comes the 8 of clubs, and now we just beat nothing. We don't have a club in our hand, so we can't even really rep the flush, if that makes any sense. All of his flush draws just improved, and we're stuck with just middle pair in a rather large pot. I don't really want to bluff at this hand, although I think it might make a little bit of sense. We are blocking some straights. We have the 7 in our hand, so that's sort of a relevant card to bluff with. But at the end of the day, we just tap the table here, and he snap checks it back with pocket queens. Sort of a frustrating hand to see here because we totally could have bluffed him off of this if we chose a large size, and instead we just played it a little bit too nitty and lost a rather large pot. The next 3 hands come back to back to back. We pick up ace jack and pocket sixes. We put some money in pre-flop, and then very quickly fold on the flop when we don't connect. Bled some money on both of these. And then lastly, we pick up 8-6 offsuit in a double board bomb pot. We whiff on both boards and lose another $15. So just pretty quickly bleeding money so far. Next hand of the day, we pick up ace king offsuit in the low jack. We've got the button straddle on, which means small blind goes first. They call the $5, and then the big blind player makes things $20 to go. Additionally, the under the gun player calls the $20, and it gets back over to me, and with big slick, we're surely 3-betting. We make things $80 to go. It folds all the way around to the big blind player, who puts in the $80 to call, and the under the gun player folds, so we're heads up to a flop with a lot of money in there. The flop comes 6-5-3 two-tone board. Big blind checks it on over, and I'm going to c-bet here a lot. All of my over pairs are doing very well on this board. In a 3-bet pot, we're going to have loads of aces, loads of kings, etc., etc. We bet $60. He thinks about it for some time and then eventually goes all in. And once again, I'm caught puking onto the table, and I have no idea what to do here. On one hand, it seems like a pretty easy fold with ace-king here, but on the other hand, what hands can he really have? I was under the impression that this guy was an aggressive player as well. I've seen him make a few big moves so far. He is a younger guy as well, so just based on stereotyping him by his age, probably on the aggressive side if I had to guess. So I give it a good think, and eventually I decide that we're going to have plenty of better hands to call here. So we throw the hand away, and he flips over the deuce of spades for what probably seems like a sick bluff. I'd imagine he's not calling a 3-bet with 2-4. He might have pocket twos, which we're losing to, so I guess he's bluffing with the best hand. Anyways, weird hand here. We probably just got rocked. But you gotta tip your cap to this guy. Like, this bluff looked incredibly strong, so not really much we could do about it. On to the next hand. Alright, so we're stuck about $500 now, but it's alright. We got a double board bomb pot here. Let's get it all back. What the hell is this? 2-3 offsuit? What are we doing? So yeah, we get dealt the nut low here and completely whiff again on both boards. And we're still 0-for in the bomb pot streets tonight, but that's alright. Let's move to the next hand. Next hand of the day comes about 10 minutes later. Also, shout out to this dealer. Look at this guy pitch cards. It's very impressive. He subscribed to the channel as well. I'm kind of an asshole. I already forgot his name, but he was a beast for sure. Shout out to him. We pick up pocket threes in the button. We see the under the gun player limp in, and the +1 player makes it $15 to go. The hijack puts in the call, and it gets over to me on the button, and I have a really ideal spot to set mine here with the amount of dead money already in the middle. If we drill a set, we'll definitely get paid, so that's exactly what we do. We put in the $15, just praying that neither of the blinds put in a squeeze here. Fortunately enough for us, the blinds fold, the straddler calls, and the limper calls, so we have a great spot to hit a set here. Going 5 ways to a flop, we get a flop of ace-6-4, which no set, just we're done with this hand. And it checks all the way over to us. We're just going to check it back and pretty much give up. So we're still 5 ways here when the turn rolls off the 5 of diamonds. Pretty good card for us, improves our hand to just an open-ended draw now. There is a good possibility that a variety of these opponents could possess 7-8 here for just the nuts, and we could be drawing dead. So it's still a bit dicey, but our hand does get better overall with the good open-ended draw here. We see 3 checks in front of us, and it gets over to the hijack player, who now bets $40. What would you guys do here? I don't really want to just fold the open-ended draw here, although we could be drawing dead like I mentioned. It's kind of hard to believe that this player would check an ace on the flop given the current dynamic going 5 ways. It seems very, very dicey to check an ace here. So I don't even know if he has that. It's just like, what hands could he possibly have that we're like live against? But in real time, we put in the $40 to call, and then it gets over to the under the gun player who also calls, as does the +1 player. So we're still 4 ways, and this pot just absolutely ballooned up to $240. The river is beautiful, awesome, terrific, however you want to describe it. It's the deuce of spades, so we drill the straight here, and it's not the high end of the straight either, it's the low end that improves our hands and doesn't really improve a lot of other hands like 6-7. So this is just the gin river card for us. And to make matters even better, it now checks all the way around to me on the button, and if someone had 7-8 here, they would certainly not be checking it going 4 ways. They would almost always be betting that specific hand. So I just find it really hard to find any sort of hands that are beating me here. Obviously gonna go for value. In real time, I was a little bit unsure of what kind of size I wanted to go with here. It didn't really feel like anybody had anything that would call a large bet, but with a stack to pot ratio of about 1-to-1, we have a slight overbet here, and I just think we're gonna go for it. We're gonna get greedy. We ship it all in for $261, a little bit over the size of the pot. We see a pretty quick fold from the under the gun limper, and then it gets over to the +1 player. He asks for a count, and eventually he puts in the call here. The hijack player gets out of the way. Straight. I roll over my threes, exclaiming that I have the straight. He mucks his hand. I have no clue what he called me with here. And we win one of the biggest pots I've ever played on the vlog, amounting to $761, for a profit of about 450 bucks, getting us pretty much unstuck on the session. About 30 minutes goes by. We've chipped down a bit from our high point after that large hand. In this hand, we see the under the gun raise to $15, and I get tricky here. I'm gonna 3-bet bluff to 55 bucks. I'm just trying to mix it up here a bit. I don't just want to be 3-betting all my premium pocket pairs. I like mixing in some 3-bet bluffs so my opponents can stay on their toes and they can't just automatically fold to every single one of my 3-bets. However, in this instance, this 3-bet bluff backfires in our face immediately as the button player cold calls and it gets back over to the under the gun player and he calls as well. So now 3 ways with a pretty crappy ace, and this certainly just didn't work as we planned it. Had we been heads up here, I would have been comfortable c-betting a decent amount and trying to just take this down, but because the button cold called, I'm not really trying to c-bet into 3 people, so we just check it back on the flop. The turn comes something random I don't remember, and the under the gun player now fires for $75, and I'm super ready to just be done with this hand. Got a bit out of line here and lost a little bit of my money. Over the next 30 minutes, I chipped down quite significantly, about $150. A lot of single raise pots that just weren't going my way on the flop. I think there was a 3-bet pot in there as well where I might have called a 3-bet, missed the flop, and folded. So the 1-3 games, the raises get pretty large, so missing flops can be very expensive. In this hand, we pick up 10-8 offsuit in the big blind. We see the low jack and the hijack limp in, and I have 10-8 offsuit in the big blind, so just going to be tapping the table here. Don't really want to play this hand, to be honest with you, but let's see what happens. 3 ways to a flop we go, and we get a rather reasonable flop, I'd say. King, jack, 9, 2 spades. We flop open-ended with the backdoor flush draw to go with it. I'm going to check in flow here. I think in theory this board is pretty bad for my big blind checking range. Not going to interact too well with any of the high cards. I also will be raising a decent amount of suited combos given this current dynamic, so overall donking here would just never be a play. I check it on over to the low jack who checks behind, and the hijack now bets $11. With an open-ended draw here, I could go either way here. Raising definitely makes some sense. I end up calling, and the low jack calls behind, so we're still 3 ways, and the pot has grown to about 40 bucks now. The turn rolls off and we do that thing once again where we just drill the best turn card in the deck. I'm going to check once again here. I think that both of these players could still have a lot of like 2-pair combos and things that want to continue betting. I check in flow and it checks over to the hijack player who fired small on the flop, and he now bets $35. With my hand, I'm obviously going to be shoveling money into the middle, especially against this player. He was very sticky, did not like to click fold. So we hit him with a little rainbow bet here where we bet 1 of every chip, making it $130 to go. The low jack player folds. We get a tank out of the hijack, and eventually he puts in the call. Heads up to the river we go, and it's pretty dicey, pretty terrible to be honest with you. It's the 10 of hearts. A lot of straight draws coming in that are beating us now. Any queen is a straight, so really not in love with this card at all. It feels really terrible to just check after check raising the turn. That seems super weak, and it seems like that would open the doors up to just get bluffed a lot on the river. If we're gonna go for value here, we need to bet a size that a 2-pair combo will call, so I don't think we can go for all of it. We end up betting $100 into about 300. This is a pretty custom size and the solver would probably hate it, but it ends up working out super nicely here for us because he puts in the call almost immediately with exactly 2-pair. So this was a pretty perfect size in my opinion. I think if we go any larger, he's just going to always fold his 2-pair combos. So we got about the max here, I'd say, and I'm really happy with this river bet sizing. Thank you. Did you get them? I had it on the turn. I really disliked that river. Thank you. About 15 minutes goes by and we pick up the exact same configuration that we had in the last hand. We pick up 10-9 offsuit. We see the low jack raise things up to $15. The hijack puts in the call, the same player from the last hand. And I should probably be folding this hand pre-flop. 10-9 offsuit, really not that good. But I'd like to see a flop here and play with these two players. So that's exactly what we do. We put it in and we are 3 ways to the flop. The flop comes 10-5-4 two-tone board. Pretty good start for us. We got top pair, 9 kicker. Obviously going to be checking in flow here. We were not pre-flop aggressor, so just going to play the hand in flow. We check it on over, and both the low jack and the hijack check back, so we are going to the turn for absolutely no charge. Turn rolls off the jack of diamonds, not really in love with it. All of the flush draws coming in now, as well as another overcard to the board, so really just turning our hand into more of a bluff catcher, if you will. I check in flow once again, no real reason to bet here. We now see the low jack player bet $20, and the hijack puts in the call. Against typical players, I'm snap folding here, but both of these players are just kind of clicking buttons. So we don't love it, but we put in $20 more. The river comes the 5 of hearts. Doesn't really change anything. If anything, this is going to be a good card for me, given I'm out of the big blind. And the low to middling pairs pairing on the board will typically affect me more than the other players. I'll probably have more 5x than these two guys who raised pre-flop. I check once again. We see the low jack player check it, and the hijack player now bets $55 for about half pot. I've seen this guy make a few big plays throughout the night. As played, we've pretty much completely under-repped our hand. Additionally, I think this player would always be raising his flushes on the turn, so I'm going to discredit him for all sorts of flush combos. I also think he'd probably raise a jack on the turn. Another thing that seemed super fishy to me was this bet sizing here. I don't think he would bet a flush with this size ever. He probably wouldn't bet a jack for this size. So he's really not telling a good story at all. He would almost certainly be betting closer to pot with his flushes, and he might just check a jack on the river. He also might bet much larger with it. I'm not really sure what he would do with specifically a jack, but this just seems super fishy to me. I think about it for a bit, and eventually I flick in a pretty light call here with 10-9. He hits us with the, "You're good, buddy." We win this nice pot here, and take down a nice hand with pretty much just a bluff catcher. We're feeling pretty confident in our reads, and definitely feeling more comfortable playing in the big game. A handful of orbits later, we pick up ace-king offsuit. In the big blind, we see the +1 player as well as the cutoff limp in for $3, and then the small blind completes. With our specific hand, we're obviously going to be bumping things up here, putting more money in the middle, etc, etc. We make it $25 to go. After we raise, we see the +1 player as well as the cutoff call our $25, so we're going 3 ways out of position with about $75 in the middle. The flop comes very dry, disconnected, so I'm going to be choosing a lot of c-bets here for a small size, especially on this board. As played, I'm going to have a lot of overpairs, a lot of aces, kings, and then a decent amount of 10x hands like ace 10, king 10, things of that nature. We throw in a c-bet for about a third of the pot. We make it $25. The +1 player gets out of the way and the cutoff makes the call, so we're now heads up to the turn. The turn comes the 9 of diamonds, which brings in a few backdoor flush draws as well as straight draws to go with it, but for the most part it seems like a relatively clean turn card for the most part. I give this spot a good think for a while, and then I eventually come to the conclusion that this guy just limped in pre-flop. I raised to a very large size. My line thus far looks very strong, and as played, he really can't have that many strong hands in his range. So I'm going to put some pressure on him here. I think this is a good opportunity to kind of get out of line and try and make a big bluff here. This opponent does get sticky a decent amount, so it is going to take probably 3 streets of betting to get him to fold whatever sort of hand he has, but I totally think we can get him to fold a lot of things if we make the proper bets on the turn and the river. We go ahead and bet $80 here, and he thinks about it for a good long while, kind of gives off a few physical tells that he's not very strong at all, shakes his head a bit, but eventually he puts in the call for the $80, and at this point in time I'm pretty much committed to this bluff now after I've seen the things that he has done. The river rolls off the queen of clubs, which I actually think is a decent card. Like, we can still have some ace queen, I guess, but first and foremost, this card is really just going to get us to generate folds against hands like ace 10, king 10, 8-9, 9, and then maybe even 5-4 if he's gotten that sticky up until this point. So all that being said, we go for it here, and this is one of the larger bluffs that I've ever attempted in my life, full disclosure. We bet $225 into the middle here, and I was very nervous. I was like actually shaking while I did this, trying not to give any physical tells away, but I was definitely shitting my pants. He tanks for probably about 30 seconds and eventually makes the fold. We table the ace king and show that we came to play today. What do you guys think about my bluff? Let me know in the comments below. I was pretty proud of this in real time. This was the biggest bluff that I've ever attempted on the vlog, and I'm really glad that it worked out. So pretty cool to make this play. A few hands later, we're playing a 6-handed bomb pot where everybody puts in $15. We see 2 boards, and we absolutely love one of the boards when we look down at pocket 8s, and we see 2 8s on one of the boards, so we just flop quads. In essence, half this pot is guaranteed to be ours, so as long as we can put some money in there, we're getting some of it back. I'm playing out of the small blind in this hand, so I check in flow. I don't really want to just donk into everybody, although I probably could. It's a bomb pot. We're just going to be a bit deceptive and check here with our quads on one board. It ends up checking all the way around to the button player, who fires out for $25. Pretty small bet into a rather large pot. Looking back at this hand, I should definitely be finding a lot of raises here. There's an entire second board that this guy could have a lot of things on, so we should definitely be growing this pot when we're guaranteed half the pot. But in real time, we just called, which I'm pretty sure is a huge mistake, but it is what it is. We get turns on both boards, which don't really affect anything. The king pairs on the bottom board, so that's kind of relevant, I guess. There are now like some aces that are in a tough spot and things like that on the other board. We check it on over to the button player once again, and he checks back. So I kind of messed this hand up. I should just probably check raise the flop and then definitely put in a large bet on the turn. But we're trying to get a little bit trappy here and play deceptively. The river rolls off on both boards, and there's now a third king on the bottom board. So we improve to a boat, if that makes any sense at all. In real time, my thought process was pretty simple. I'm guaranteed half this pot. If he calls, he's probably going to beat me on the other board. So I don't really want to get called. I just want to blow him off of a chop, if that makes any sense. So that's what we're going to go with here. We choose a very, very large size of $175, and this player hits the tank for like 3 minutes. It was a pretty egregious tank. I'm pretty sure somebody called the clock on him. After this player tanks for what feels like a decade, he eventually throws his cards into the muck, and rather than winning half the pot here, we just scoop all of the money in the middle, which I think is an ideal outcome. Yeah, just dookie bets, bluffing with quads. I'm the greatest in the world. About an orbit later, we pick up 7-5 of diamonds on the button. We see the +1 player raise to $15, and the hijack makes the call. I'm on extreme winner's tilt right now, so I put in $15, and I want to play some bingo, so we flick it in. The big blind calls behind, so we're 4 ways in position to a flop with a little suited 1 gapper. The flop is alright for us, I guess. It's 6-5-5, so we flop trips. 6 of diamonds out there as well, so we got a backdoor flush draw if we need that. We see the +1 player start with a $20 bet. The hijack puts in the call, and I could raise here. It would make some sense to raise with trips, but we're kind of blocking a lot of hands that we need protection from. Like if our opponents have 7-8 or something like that, we definitely should be raising, but because we have the 7 in our hand, we have a good blocker effect, so I think we can kind of just play this one slow and keep the strength of our hand somewhat disguised. We put in the $20 call, and the big blind calls behind, so we're still 4 ways here with a very large pot now. The turn comes the 3 of diamonds, so kind of just improves our hand even more. We now have a flush draw to go with it. Again, we're not really scared of anything because we're blocking a lot of the hands that have a lot of equity against us. If we didn't block the flush draws and we didn't block any straight draws, we would probably be a bit more timid here, but because of that, I'm really not too worried about anybody having us beat. On the turn, it now checks all the way around to me on the button, and I absolutely want to be putting in bets here. We've disguised our hand thus far, so people could just see a young kid with a lot of chips and think he's going absolutely bananas. We bet $100. The big blind very quickly jams behind us for 75 in total, so we've already got that covered. Everybody else folds. We flip over our hand, and he just snap mucks his hand. We win this pot and pick up a nice $180 to add to our stack.
Y'all done, bud? Yeah, man. Have a good night. Thank you.
The next hand of the day comes about 20 minutes later. We pick up pocket tens in the small blind. We see an under the gun raise to $15 followed by a hijack call. It gets over to me and I have a pretty easy 3-bet here. We choose a very large size given that we're out of position. There is some dead money in there. We make it $80. It folds back to the under the gun player and he now puts in a cold 4-bet to $250. It got back over to me and I remember folding this pretty quickly. It seems like a big fold. I actually checked the solver after the fact. Given that we're 200 big blinds deep, the solver actually wants to put in the call here half the time with pocket tens. But a GTO solver is also 4-betting a variety of bluffs in this spot, so against an optimized opponent, I can see why this is a call half the time, but against a 4-bet in a 1-3 game, his range is pretty much going to look like this, and tens does very poorly against those hands, so we threw it into the muck and lost $80 here. Let me know what you guys think. At 9 o'clock, we got a nice dinner, some chicken tenders, some rice, some veggies, good stuff here. Overall, I'd give it about a 5.5 out of 10. At 9:30, we're back in action on the felt. We see an under the gun raise to $15 with a low jack call to go with it. I got ace queen offsuit here and I bump things up to $75 to go. It folds back to the under the gun raiser and he hits the tank for a little bit and eventually puts in the call. The low jack folds and we're going heads up to a flop with ace queen. We get a pretty good flop here of ace jack 7 two-tone board. He checks it on over to me and I stick in a pretty standard c-bet of $55 here. He thinks about what to do for quite some time here and eventually he puts in a massive raise here to $275. He's got about $200 behind. Pretty crazy spot here. I didn't really know what to do. In real time, this bet seemed so incredibly strong, super polar. There's a variety of hands that he could have that were just way behind against. Hands like sevens, jacks, and ace jack I think would all play like this. I just don't really see a world where this is ever a bluff. This is such a large bet. It's super polarizing. There are a variety of flush draws that he could have, I guess, but I feel like this specific player would probably just call and see a turn with a flush draw. I don't really think he would choose this massive raise. So yeah, really tough spot. I eventually make a huge laydown here.
Sick bluff.
And he just snap rolls over 3-4 offsuit, so he wrecked our world. I don't know, maybe this is supposed to be a call, maybe this is a terrible fold, but in real time, in hindsight, like, the most 1-3 players are just never finding a bluff when they play like this. I don't know. I really don't know, though. Let me know what you guys think. After he rolled over the 3-4 of spades, he demanded that I put him on the vlog. He was super happy with this bluff, and honestly, I respect it. Like, you gotta have some balls to make a play like this, so good for this guy. Shout out to him. Hopefully he's watching this video, and he sees this beautiful bluff that he pulled off. After playing for a bit longer, we rack up our chips and hit the road.
Alright, vlog just wrapped up. Played for like 6.5, 7 hours. In for 800, out for 1,050 for a net profit of $250. Nice little win for us for sure. We had about 1,300 in the stack at one point, so we were up 500 at that. So yeah, we kind of bled down from our high point of about 1,300 at one point, but that's part of the game. We played that ace-queen hand, obviously, where the dude bluffed us with 3-4 offsuit. Just, what an absolute menace, an absolute demon. Not much I can do about that. I could maybe just jam ace-queen, I guess, but I don't know. He seemed super polar, and I really thought I was just going to run into ace-jack or a set of sevens or something like that. So, tough spot. If we somehow found a call there, we would have been up a bunch of money, but what are you going to do? I think my fold is probably fine. I guess we'll see. Yeah, really, honestly, fun session. I played a lot of large pots. Sort of uncomfortable at the beginning of all of it, but once I had settled in, got in a little groove. It's just poker. You get 2 cards and only so much that can happen, so. But yeah, certainly a bigger game than I'm accustomed to, but I think we held our own. We did all right. Certainly a few good players at the table. But yeah, we had fun. We did all right. We won some money. Got a lot of good clips for the vlog. Not really much more you could ask for. On top of all that, I even got recognized a few times by a few people, so that's cool as well. This channel is just taken off. It's honestly sick walking into a place like this and a handful of people immediately recognize you and come up and say good things about your videos, so that's sort of just good motivation, and hopefully we can keep it going. Yeah, I'm kind of rambling now. Yeah, honestly, good game. It was a fun night. Played pretty well. Got some good clips. And until next time, guys, Dookie Bets.